after a couple of drafts, Jishnu started playing with ideas of saying, hey, can we take this to another layer? Can we now show it as an atom and the universe? Because it's the same idea.
The light passes through the nectar and it shines. So okay, it's carrying the nectar, so it's heading this way, so the beehive will be this way. So a lot of these things, that was kind of mind boggling for me when I had these conversations with him, that he was Gurva, he had lived that life.
When we decided that, okay, these are the 7 stories, we wanted to ask ourselves, okay, how those stories didn't come randomly. They were made as a choice, and their names were made as a choice because we had a set of 15 stories, but we chose this based on the curation.
Hey everyone, my name is Parush and welcome to the new episode of Long Live Cinema Show, where I got the chance to speak to Sandeep, PS and Sumanth Bhat, who are the creators behind the new Kannada series Ekam, which is now streaming on ekamtheseries.com. You can watch all episodes of Ekam along with enjoying some freebies that you get about the series by tapping the link in the description. In this episode, Sandeep and Sumanth shared a lot of insights about how they proceeded with creating the series. We talked extensively about their process of writing the show, about creating the opening credits, about shooting the different episodes of the series, and what all challenges that they had to overcome in order to bring their idea to life. It's a very informative episode, and I'm very grateful to Sandeep and Sumanth for taking out time for this conversation and giving Long Live Cinema the chance to associate with Ekam. I'm very happy to get this opportunity, and without any further delay, let's sit back, relax, and start the show. I want to first of all get started with the very thing with which every episode starts, and that are the opening credits. Jishnu has once again done a fabulous job. Midhun has, once again just nailed the feeling with his choice of chords. But I want to ask you guys, can you help us, take us behind the scenes by telling us about how the making of the entire title sequence took place? What was the idea behind creating that title sequence? Because this looks completely international, and I swear I haven't skipped the opening credits because it just builds up that right feeling that you are about to enter a world, and of course you are calling it Ekam and one in the multitude. So I would love to know from you guys, what were your references, what were your inspirations, what was the idea behind creating this sequence? Did you want to, because there are different kinds of sequences that we see. Some of the shows or some of the projects have just the name and that's it. They move ahead with it, like a Breaking Bad or a Better Call Saul. But you guys opted for like a full-blown animated title sequence to begin with begin every episode. So I would love to know everything that you can share about the making of that sequence. Anyone can start.
Go ahead, Sandeep.
Sure. So I think firstly we'll have to give a lot of credit to Jishnu from yes, we had an idea or a base idea of what we wanted to do, but where Jishnu took it from there, we could have never imagined. We could have never imagined the scale of things that he was going to achieve. So
And sorry to just interrupt. And also Midhun, I think the brief for Midhun also was way too abstract. It was a one-line brief, and what he came up with was this. This was the first thing that he came up with. And the brief, if I remember rightly, Sandeep, correct me if I'm wrong, was the sum of everything is what? Nothing. That was the brief, or something as abstract as that.
But everything comes from that.
Yeah. So basically, the core idea of Ekam, we kind of put it into a one-line thing and gave it to Midhun, and this is what he came up with. So sorry, Sandeep, just go ahead.
Yeah. So to give you a bit of context, when we came up with Ekam, there were two thoughts that were going into our heads. Okay. So when we decided to make a series, one thing that we decided to look at was what was the sort of content that was already out there. Okay. So this was pre-pandemic. So there were two main streams of thought. One was sort of a graying of black and white characters. So you had Mirzapur, you had Sacred Games, and you had all that kind of stuff. And then you also had series that were based in metros, which was sort of an exploration of the newfound freedom from censorship.
Right.
So we asked ourselves if we can stay away from both, and is there an opportunity, right? So that's where we ended up choosing Karavali, and we ended up taking inspiration from Malgudi Days. Okay, in the sense that Malgudi Days was able to tell the story of a fictional space, but it resonated with everyone in the country because it was human stories. So the thought was, what if we were able to do that with a real place? Just like Malgudi Days, but we tell you the stories of the real place, and in a way that it resonates with you, even if you're not from there, right?
Right, right.
So that sort of gave us the lens for the season. But for the series, we still had thoughts of a second parallel thought of where we were in terms of the country and the world, in the sense that discourse had become so hard. There's so much polarity, and discourse was becoming so hard. But at the same time, people were coming together for cricket and festivals and films. So we were asking ourselves, is there a way for the curation to lend to that? To celebrate our differences and our similarities. And the first thing that Sumanth came up with was the word itself. So Ekam is the word that Sumanth came up with, and that essentially means that not one, but where everything comes together as one. So that thought drove everything in the curation, right? So we consider the episodes as part of the season, and everything else, which is your title sequence, the music, the logo design, the 3D world, everything had to lend to this thought, right? So that's what we that was the base foundation of the idea that we took to Jishnu and that we took to Mithun, in terms of saying, hey, so now there are all these stories, there are all these layers, in season one and multiple seasons, but we're trying to say that the place where all these multiple stories come together, where we realize that you and me are the same, is Ekam. So how do we interpret that visually in a logo, in a 2D logo? How do we interpret that in a film or a title sequence? And how do we interpret that in music, right? So if you notice, Mithun has done it in an incredible fashion, in the sense that he has all these instruments which are instruments from all over the country, and some even from not India. So you will hear those instruments playing, and when the last part of the logo sequence starts, after the narration, you'll see all these instruments and you hear it. But at the same time, there is a frequency that is not an instrument frequency. Okay, I'll let him explain, you should speak to him about it. But that's at a whole other level. So he's clearly telling you that we are all in these lines that go around this piece of one that you'll never be able to reach. That one is where we all come together. So he's interpreted that even from an instrument point of view, right? And Jishnu's, I think, journey started with a simple 2D logo of things going around where there's an emptiness in the center. If you see the 2D logo of Ekam,
Yeah, yeah.
right? That's where we started. Of course, we had so many interpretations of, what was that, Sumanth? Spirals.
The spiral,
right?
yeah, basically.
Yeah. The first interpretation of this idea was a spiral, where everything sort of cycles into the center, right? But that kept building and building and building, and Jishnu had his own interpretations, man. So after a couple of drafts, Jishnu started playing with ideas of saying, hey, can we take this to another layer? Can we now show it as an atom and the universe, because it's the same idea, right? Can we then go into planets? Can we then show take inspiration from murmuration of birds and show these particles moving? He just went crazy. So after a point, I said, Jishnu, hey, listen, now this idea is no more ours. We came for a title sequence, but now you're making a film. So now I need you to shift from being the guy who's making our title sequence to being the guy who's directing the program. This is a film now, so you're directing it. So you tell me from now, I'm not going to tell you anymore. You tell me from now what film you want to make. We just need to be aligned with where it's headed. So after that, it's all Jishnu. It's all Jishnu in terms of how he came up with the words. And of course, we might have lended a little, but all credit to him from there. Because we could have never imagined where he was going to take it. It's incredible. And for the kind of budgets and timelines we had, Jishnu is a genius.
He just took it on himself to kind of deliver with his small team. So because now that in hindsight we know the kind of effort that it has taken, but back then every now and then we used to get restless saying, Jishnu, do we have any updates? He's like, it's coming out nicely, but it's going to take some time. And we used to be very restless. And after every call, we used to end the call amazed, saying, he just shows some samples and we're like, wow, okay, take some time.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I think it is the very nature of these close-knit collaborations that actually, leads to such amazing results. And for whatever I have got the opportunity to speak to Jishnu, I'm sure he must have put his heart and soul into it. And of course, Midhun, again, when I got the chance to speak to him, the way he thinks about telling a story within a song and serving the narrative. It's once again, it has reflected in his both of their choices. So, since we are talking about the inception of Ekam, let's just dive a little deeper. And I want to now understand, like you mentioned, that this is something that you started doing pre-pandemic. Like we are talking about prehistoric times, to be honest. But uh, how did how did the seed plant in your head? Like, what was it always meant to be a series? Did you think of feature films like a trilogy of feature films, or did you think of an anthology ki we will, put it up as an anthology of short stories and maybe have like a parts of anthologies that in part one, let's say we have 4 stories and the other 4 comes in part two. How did you guys come up with Ekam? What was that journey of giving birth to your child? I want to know that. I know it's a very personal question, but I would love to. I would love to know it.
Yeah, I think. I mean, it also kind of we cover that in the docu series, but basically, I had done one short film, okay, way back in 2017, 18, and then for my second short film is when I got in touch with Sandeep, okay, and I come from Udupi. I born and brought up in Udupi. I live in Udupi, okay. So and even the first short film was shot in Udupi, and even the second short film was set in Udupi completely, okay. And Sandeep came on board, and both of us, I think, absolutely loved the collaboration. By the end of the, when we finished the short film, we were jamming a lot, saying, how do we get this film out? Because we were happy with how the short film shaped up, but we are like, acha, what now for the short films? And because it was a slightly longish short film, it was not a, we couldn't send it to festivals. A lot of festivals wouldn't take short films that are 40 minutes and upwards, because it doesn't help the curation. So, I kept asking Sandeep, saying, yeah, what do we do? What is the point of making? And Sandeep, since day one, the only condition why he came on board with my short film was, are you going to release it? Are you going to take it an audience? Or is it a short film that you're going to shoot for yourself and, let it die? If that is the case, I'm not coming on board. So, I made him a promise saying, I'm going to get it out. So that is how he came on board. But the entire collaboration was, for me and for him as well, both of us wanted to do more. So this question of what do we do with these short films, I think Sandeep that at some point called me suddenly saying, I think we have a solve. We have 2 films that are set so strongly in a place. I mean, place is a character in both these films, so why not we explore a series or more short films where we explore a particular place in various dimensions. You explore the cultures, you explore the food, you explore the topography, everything. And that sounded very fascinating back then, and that opened up a lot of possibilities of it being a multi-season series. Because even right then we were seeing the possibilities of it, of what it could do. So that is how it started, and then Sandeep kind of became very serious with the thought, and kind of I thought initially like, ha, acha acha yaar kar sakte hum log, this sounds very interesting, but wo to matlab he took it on.
Yeah, so I think, like Suman said, no. So after making the short film, I think the biggest point for us was, we never really made it for festivals. We were making it for people to watch around us. So and we were also not done with the format, with the short film format or the short, So we wanted to explore because we had just finished it. We were like, okay, it'll be fascinating to do a lot more shots and put it in front of the audience. And this is when the OTTs had just entered the country, and there was so much, uh, 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 fascination around the series format, and what
Which
it can.
which year was this? I'm so sorry. Which year was
This
this?
is 2019. 2019. Yeah. So it was really fresh in the country, and we were like, and in the south, though, there is no series at that point, and hardly any series coming in the Indian thing, and it was fresh. So we really wanted to pursue that and thought that was an opportunity. And uh, after a point, I think we became really serious, and we decided, okay, let's go to Udupi for a month and see if we can spend a month collecting stories and develop it and see what happens. So I got a bunch of people from my company, and we just went to Udupi. We set up in Manipal, and we spent a month in development. And we found a bunch of like 10, 15 stories, not necessarily from Karavali, but stories that would fit in Karavali, right? And during that time, we decided we're going to create a script bible and have all these 7, 8 stories set and create a curation of what are the ordering of the stories, what is it going to say. We found the name Ekam, we found elements of what the series was going to be, and then we were like, okay, we're ready to pitch. But we also didn't want to take it to an OTT straight at that point. we were like, hey, someone like a TVF is producing their own series and then licensing it to an OTT. So maybe we could try that. And also because we had a little more access to production houses at that point, then we straight to OTTs. So we decided, okay, who shall we pitch to? And luckily, Sumanth already knew Rakshit, and Rakshit was already on the top of the list for us, Rakshit and Parama Studios. So we took it straight to them, and the rest has been fantastic. I mean, momentarily fantastic before the pandemic, of course. But yeah, but
Right.
that's the origin, really.
Right, right. Uh, how did you bring together everyone? Like, let's say you took it to Rakshit and he obviously loved the idea. So, how did you assemble your Avengers? How did you bring together the team? Ki, okay, this is going to be my DOP, this is going to be. Because you are venturing into something that is probably done for the very first time, when, especially when it comes to Kannada cinema. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So, you obviously need a lot of faith and trust in your project. So, how did you go about bringing together each and every one? Because you are not just talking about a feature film, you are talking about a series, which is like an extended duration project. So, I'm guessing that it requires a lot more people compared to a feature film. So, how did you bring together the people? Like, what was the next step once the idea just sold?
I think it's better Sandeep does it because Sandeep is a graduate of the LVP school, LVP Film School in Chennai. So a lot of he had access to a lot of technicians. Like say, I found my DOP Udit Khurana through Sandeep, and then Udit worked with me through Ekam. The 2 episodes that we shot post the series went on the floors, and my feature film Mithya as well. So yeah, Sandeep.
Yeah, so see, firstly, I mean, to tell you a bit about when we pitched to Rakshit, right? So we went in expecting the process to be, okay, we'll pitch and then it'll take a month or so, and no idea, right? But we definitely didn't go with a lot of optimism. But we went and we pitched, narrated our stories, and he said, "Hey, okay, give me 2 minutes." And he went for a break, and he comes back and he's like, "Okay, done, chalo, it's on. You guys come back with your budget, and we will take it on." And that's how easy it was. That's how wonderful it was for us. And we immediately started work, but of course the pandemic hit, and we had to entirely reframe, and we had to do a bunch of other stuff that we can talk about a bit later. But in terms of finding the crew, the thing is, I graduated from film school in 2013. So by the time we were thinking of making this series, I had been, making films for brands and making some short films and interacting and even doing film workshops for about 8 9 years by then. So I had a lot of people who had lent their faith and worked with us as a community. We used to have something called a discovery session. That's how actually Sumanth met Udit for the first time, where 10 filmmakers would come together and we would just talk about our problems and what we could do together and so on and so forth. So, Journeyman has always been driven by a community sort of thing. So, when this sort of got greenlit, both Sumant and I jumped on the idea of bringing in as many people as we could to see how many collaborations can take it on, because we were planning to make 8 films. Of course, we made 7 out of the 8, but we knew it's going to be a huge task, but we wanted to do it our way entirely, right? So including the editor, the sound designers, Jishnu, everyone was onboarded 3 months before the shoot. So everyone was brought down to Manipal, and for 3 months we were all living in 3 flats and working. It didn't matter whether you were an editor, it didn't matter at which part of the process you were actually supposed to come in, because we were sharing the film with everyone and saying, "Hey, here are the scripts. Now let's figure out, let's compartmentalize and figure out, but let's come together every day." So that was an amazing process, and because we had access over these years from film school and otherwise, there were enough people to tap on, and luckily they took the bait. Yeah,
For good, I mean, for the best, I'm
yeah.
sure. But then I'm sure the question also arises that yes, I have no doubts that Paramva Studios is a great collaborator, and they'll do everything to bring to take that leap of faith in people like you to bring new stories, not just to the Kannada landscape, but to the entire Indian storytelling landscape. But then one of the most, like, it's not just me who will think like this, but people who listen to this and people who are watching Ekam as well as we speak. By the way, guys, check the link in description. Do watch it. So one of the most obvious questions that someone might ask is, did you not go to someone like a Netflix or a Prime Video, or I mean, it's not just Netflix or Prime Video anymore. There are a plethora of streaming platforms available. So did you guys consider going to them, or you were always pivoted towards talking to someone like Rakshit and Parama Studios कि नहीं हमें इनके साथ ही काम करना है?
See, there are two factors to that. I mean, I'll share my thoughts and then Sumanth, you can come in. So there are two factors that we had in mind. One was that before doing this, a year before that, I had actually met Netflix and Hotstar to pitch a series in Malayalam. Okay. So both of them had heard it out, and one Netflix said, "Hey, Malayalam, we are not there yet. So if you want to look at it in Hindi, maybe we can look at it." And Hotstar was very interested, but Hotstar said, "Listen, this is great and the narration is great, but for this to take off, you need someone, maybe like a Ledger Jose Pellissieri, to give him, get him on board as a showrunner, or someone of that caliber will have to come on board." And that's the first time I heard the term showrunner, right? I didn't even know what it was back then, right? So once I understood that, then it became very clear that, listen, if you don't have a body of work, it's going to be very hard for them to greenlight and take that sort of a bet with you. One. Second, I sort of wanted to prove to myself that I can become a showrunner myself, and what does it take to pursue that. So in fact, the short film that Suman told you about, Suman had actually reached out to me to shoot it. But I convinced him that, hey, can I creatively produce that film, and can I get Ankur to shoot? Will you consider Ankur to shoot it, and can I creatively produce? And Sumant also, his first question was, okay, can you tell me what that role means? What are you really going to do when you say creatively produce? But that was the sort of journey. So this was one side of things. The second point was that we were very aware that OTTs were far away from producing a series in Kannada at that point, right? Because they were still yet to enter the market, but we were positive that by the end of our production, they would have entered. Because Rakshit and everyone in the industry were very positive that in 2 years they will be in Kannada, they will be looking for a lot of content, so we will be ready, right? So both of these factors sort of collided, and we were like, okay, cool. So let's produce, because they may not be able to be ready to take the bet at the moment, but by the time we are done, it'll be a perfect fit. So naivety and optimism blended together. So
Excellent. That's an excellent combination. Sumant, please.
Yeah, no, nothing. I think before production, that was the only reason, because I think Netflix had just released that the song Namma South, Namma Stories or something. I think that had Kannada rap, that had Tamil, that had Telugu. The time seemed just right, and we felt we are the early goers, and we'll have it ready by the time they actually pursue content in South India. That was one, and also, like he said, optimism that the kind of stories we are going after. We knew we are going after something fresh. What we do is something that has not been tried very often, at least. So we kind of truly believed in what we're going after. It could be our naivety, whatever that is. But yeah, so it's that, whatever Sandeep said, I can't put it any better than what he did. So
Finally, the series has come out, and I hope that more platforms actually encourage people like you to tell their stories in the way you want to tell them. And because I'm sure, I mean, you guys have way more experience than me, so you already know the fact that the landscape is changing, and I believe the acceptance towards telling new stories and new formats with new ideas is happening right now. I hope that Ekam can be like a great, I won't say lesson, but like a great inspiration for all the platforms that, look, we have something like this, and stories like Ekam deserve much better reach. I'm sure it will reach to a lot of people, but I hope that this turns out to be a great motivator and inspirator for every platform out there to greenlit more projects and support more people like you. Without compromising on any of your contracts, I would love to know, I would love to understand every step of setting up a streaming platform, because you guys have done, by the way, I just a feedback as a viewer, the player works very well, the quality shifts automatically, doesn't take too much of time, and it is as smooth as you can imagine from a Netflix or a Prime Video, and the sign up process is seamless, everything is just perfect. So I am very curious to understand, how did you guys set up this streaming platform from scratch? Because right now you just mentioned that the fact that you being a showrunner itself is a huge deal, because you had to understand all the dynamics of being a showrunner, and now the next step is, okay, you have to create a streaming platform. So how did that happen, and can you explain every step of the process? Of course, you don't have to compromise on any professional agreements, I completely understand that, but as much information that you can share will be very, I'll be very grateful.
Ah, okay. So in hindsight, no, I mean, it seems destiny to me because I was in IT for 5 years. Okay. I hated it. And I quit, moved back to Udupi, set up our design firm where I did websites. Okay. Where I created websites for clients for a good 10 odd years before shutting down the company and pursuing films. So it all makes sense now in hindsight that I had to do it so that we are able to pull off this Ekam ka streaming website on our own. But trying to come back to your question, I think Sandeep constantly, every now and then, when we are facing rejections from the OTT, used to put this thought in our head saying, "Yaar, bhai, hum log hi karte kuch," and I'm like, I always felt it too radical a thought, okay, because I was only considering the Kannada audience as our audience, and he kept pushing that idea, and at some point, kind of, I gave in because there seemed to be no hope otherwise, and simultaneously, Sandeep had gone and done a lot of R&D before he came to me, kind of, he was figuring out where do we stream it, how do we stream, and all that. So I think once we figured out that it was workable, I mean, it was not a very seamless, ready-made solution नहीं मिला था हम लोगों को, but we had to do a lot of jugaad. Like how we pulled off the series, this was 10 times more jugaad than that. So we kind of were putting pieces together and trying to figure out how they can work together as one unit. So the fact that you found it seamless, it's a great credit. I think Sandeep and I can take some credit for that, because it is anything but that in the background. Okay, there's so many things that had to come together, and I think we took a good 2-3 months, Sandeep, to kind of figure out, make it a seamless experience. So yeah, I think yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to give you a bit more clarity, Paurush, so see, um, after making the series, we were ready, right? So ready for the world to accept it, because we were like, okay, we promised our investors that we would finish it in a certain budget. We did do that, and we promised we'll finish it in a certain timeline. We finished it, and we were like, okay, so now where are the OTTs? Let's just share it to them, and then in 2 months it's out, and we'll move on to the next project. That was the idea. But we finished in maybe 1.5 years, maybe most of the work, and maybe 20-30% of the post was left. And we spent the last 2.5 years pitching to OTTs. Okay. So, and we've taken one OTT at a time, because you don't want to really offend one OTT saying that you're speaking to five at the same time, right? And unfortunately, what happens is each OTT requires a 3-month process, right? Because you are one among the 10,000 projects that's trying to get their attention, right? So after 3 months, they would tell us, hey, sorry, Kannada is not happening, anthology is not happening. And that rejection would happen without the show being watched, right? Uh, because it's a policy level issue, right? That they're not yet in the market. So, but what's happening through this entire 2 years was we kept having hope that, okay, it's not them, then there's this. Then if not this OTT, then there's that OTT, and so on and so forth. And there were some OTTs that were vaguely showing interest and dragged it along. And at the end of maybe 2 years is when we realized there is no option, it's over, you know. And also you must realize that Ekam is getting older and older, and we are all living the same life of Ekam ki release hoga. So a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, a lot of entitlement, that I mean, anger and sadness born out of this entitlement ki, Arey, I deserve this, Only then you realize you are part of the 98% of cinema in India that doesn't get released, right? So then the effort was okay. It took a lot of objectivity to tell ourselves that Ekam hasn't failed. It has only failed to secure distribution, right? For a series, for a film, nobody can stop you from going to theater, because you can put it out there, and if you are ready, if you are capable of doing marketing and keeping it there, it's up to you, but nobody can stop you, nobody can gate you from it. But unfortunately for a series, unless one of these streaming platforms are ready to pick it up, there's no way, you know so the logic was okay, distribution has failed in the sense no OTTs are picking up, so can we solve for that? So when I started sounding into Sumant, or even to myself, or even to Aaron, who's running Journeyman with me, it was the idea of a madman, that okay, this guy is now losing it. You are really losing it. And I would feel that myself. But I think when it became a spot where we had no other choice, I think we started giving it a serious thought and we started analyzing. So, to answer your question now, when we looked at what's out there, all the built to suit, there are a few options, right? There are a few options like Bright Cove and few other. I can't remember the names right now, but where you could just pay them for an interface and an app. They will build the app for you. They will build the platform for you. It's ready to go, and you pay them a certain price for using that interface as a white label solution, which essentially means you can brand it the way you want. Plus, you pay over and above that for the bandwidth that's being used and the security that they have to provide, right? So, fixed fee plus a as per usage fee, right? But these were extremely expensive for us, because again we had that rule that we don't want to take another penny from our investors, and we've already delayed return by 2 years than what we had imagined. So we were like, okay, that's not an option for us. There's no more money to be spent. So then we started doing research as to, is there a way we can plug these pieces together ourselves, right? So to give you a very broad idea, we knew that we needed a server that can handle the playback and the bandwidth and the security to some extent, right? So we found a server that allows for that, and at a cost effective price, which allows us to pay as per usage, right? And then we knew that we needed a front end website, that where we can design the interface so that it looks a certain way, right? And then we needed another piece which is critical to us, because we knew that hey, putting your series on a website and saying come watch and pay what you want or pay a certain price is not an idea that's going to fly, right? Because each one of us on this call has 2 or 3 or 4 subscriptions, right, which we're already paying for, and we can't watch all that content. So me telling you to pay for one piece of content is not going to happen. But the hypothesis was this, that one, nobody today watches anything without someone telling them ki yaar tune, did you watch this, right? So it's almost like it's become like the stock market. You don't buy a stock unless you hear from voices that you like ki you should buy this. So even film and cinema has become like that today, that it is only by the influence of people that you trust that you will watch something, right? So we were like, okay, so then is there a way to tap on that, and is there a way to create a new distribution system, right? If so, who are these new age distributors that we can find, and what do they need, right? So which is when we were like, okay, what if we onboard bloggers, Instagrammers, YouTubers, apart from traditional international and regional distributors? What if we onboard people who are celebrating cinema without boundaries, you know because that was our goal. People who celebrate cinema regardless of language, regardless of genre, and they dissect it for the love of cinema, and they have an audience, right? Their audience is the audience we want to tap into, right? So we were like, okay, is there a way to onboard them as a distributor and replicate the theatrical model, right? So which is exactly what we did, but that also meant we needed a third piece of technology, which allows us to track key this audience came from this distributor who's running this Instagram page, and we had to give them a dashboard and ourselves a dashboard where they're able to see how many views they got, how many clicks they got, and how many purchases they have, so that that transaction and that percentage of that revenue can be mapped to them, right? So this is the real uh, thing that let us believe that we can pursue this. that okay, they found a new distribution system, and if we can onboard enough distributors, uh, they if they are authentic with their audience, not promotions, right? Because everyone can see through a promotion. If you're authentic with your audience, maybe they give it a chance. So these three pieces is essentially what makes up our platform, right? A front end where you have a user interface, yeah, just the user interface. A backend, you have a server that is taking care of the bandwidth and the security to some extent, and then we have a tracker which tracks our billing system, the payments, and also tracking it to our affiliates, right? These three systems put together in ways that one must not all these three systems, I don't think, know that we have tied them together in the most frugal ways, right? So by no means is it foolproof, but it is a hypothesis, and if it works, it tells us a lot of things. One, it tells these people who run these pages that hey, you can actually distribute cinema that you agree with and you believe in. And one, it tells all of us filmmakers and everyone in the industry that there might just be a way to sell films online yourself, you know, because everyone's able to sell everything from a sex toy to a cloth to a book online, and cinema seems to not have a way to sell something online, right? So that's what we're really excited about. And yeah, so I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so the fact that why we wanted a website of our own as opposed to have it on Vimeo or YouTube for pay for rent was because we constantly kept asking ourselves what is the value that we can give. Like the obvious this thing of people having subscribed to so many OTTs. Why would people just come and pay and watch your show? How could we make it a no brainer? How much value can we give outside of the show? So we wanted to share the scripts, the docu series, and everything. So the only way we could do it also was having our own website.
That makes sense. And that also answers my question, which I was just about to ask as a follow up, that why did you consider uploading it all on Paramva Studios one by one, like let's say a weekly series? Because right now, a lot of like Dhoomam recently came out on YouTube, and Netflix also uploaded one of their very popular animation films on their channel just to see how it goes and what all happens. Prime Video also uploaded the very first episode of Panchayat season 3. The entire episode was uploaded. So I think that answers my question that yeah, you need that like the distribution model that you just explained. I think that fits very perfectly with what you are trying to achieve in the long run.
Yeah, I'll add another point there. Like, why we can't release Akam on YouTube or any of that is because, so like I told you, once Rakshit agreed to invest in the show, pandemic hit. Okay, but when the pandemic hit, Rakshit was still in between the production of Charlie, which meant a lot of his cash was tied up, and it wouldn't make sense for him to, make new investments at the point. So we had only two choices. One is that we wait for the pandemic to get over, Charlie to get done, and then get into income, or request Rakshit, which is what we did, to dilute his equity and allow other investors to come on board, right? But what we did is we got investors on board who are first time investors. A lot of them friends and friends of friends who have entered the industry for the first time and invested in the show as individual investors, right? So we knew that there is no way we can go to sleep unless we do right by them, because sure, they're friends, but more importantly, they would never touch this industry again, you know. So we would be doing a lack of justice on the entire thing. So we knew that whatever we do, it cannot be just to release Akam for the audience. Yes, that's the main thing for us as filmmakers, but films are a very expensive affair. So the investor needs a chance to recoup, and without that, it makes no sense whatsoever. There is no glory in that. There is no glory in taking somebody's money, making your dream, and releasing it for no return. There is no glory in that, according to me, right? So that's why we had to find a way where there is a commercial option, there is a return.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now that we have spoken a lot about the commerce of this story, let's just focus more towards the art side of it. And to be very honest, I've watched 4 episodes, and that is what I was discussing with Sumanth as well. And I would like to start talking about my favorite episode so far, which is Void. Really like that episode. There is a lot that you are trying to say with the help of this episode. Of course, there is a huge connection with nature. It also talks about how someone who, feels grateful to the nature for providing him his daily bread is now assuming the responsibility of a hunter who is supposed to take down everything and just exploit the natural reserves for personal gains. Yes, for someone else's personal gains, but now he, like, once he has that rifle, he becomes the hunter. And I love the fact that there is this red mark on his shoulder all the time he's having the gun, which is symbolizing his burden and how he has to take care of something that he has never done. So I would love to know, when you were writing this episode, what was your intent about it? Because these are my interpretations. Because I feel this episode is also a commentary on how we have somehow lost our connect with nature, because we have too much of concrete around us, too much of technology around us, that we have lost contact with just the fact that we don't even touch a tree anymore. But here is someone who has spent his life so much in the forest that when he sees a bike, he's like, oh, okay, how do I sit on it? Sure, I'm not saying that everyone goes behind and once again shifts to being extremely traditional, but somehow we have lost that touch with the natural world in our daily lives. So I would love to know the entire process of writing this particular episode.
Okay. So I think even in the very early stages, I think void was nowhere in the picture back then. But we had a basic curation of sorts, where we are kind of through each episodes trying to explore the life cycle of a person. Okay, and in the larger curation, it became the life cycle of a place as well, because the place is equally a what do you say? It's equally a part of the entire series, and it's a very important character in the series. So we thought, yeah, this also has to be the life cycle of Udupi, of where it was and where it is and where it could be, kind of thing. So when we are also on the lookout for stories, and one of my ex-employees, Shashikant, so he had this idea, and this is something that had happened. I mean, without it being a spoiler, but the climax is something that had happened. It's not the way it has happened, but something like that had happened. And he told me that, do you think this is interesting? And I jumped onto it. I told it to Sandeep, and even he liked it. And I thought this was a perfect fit for that phase of life, or that phase of the curation that we're looking at, that we're going after, of this phase where, you know, you are redundant, in the larger setup of the society, at that point in time where you become redundant and the world has moved on and you are kind of, you have to catch up but you don't want to, and it's that phase of you being hanging loose, no. So and I think because I happen to be from this place, Udupi for me right now is in that transition phase, where the technology is catching up, the modernization is catching up, but Udupi as such has not caught up. So it's struggling to catch up, it's struggling to kind of belong, and there's a lot of youngsters who are moving out of Udupi, to greener pastures, to Bangalore, to abroad. A lot of them are abroad, so it's largely the older people who are left back. A lot of younger population, you have 100 engineering colleges here, every other guy is an engineer, I'm an engineer, all my friends are engineers, so everybody moves on. Okay, so it's only the older people, yeah, it's only the older people who are left back. So kind of everything made sense when we tried seeing void in that context of our curation. So the entire writing also kind of was driven by that one thought of what is it that this film is trying to say, outside of the obvious story of this hunter and his his this thing with a gun. So that became very clear of what this film has to do for Ekam as a series, and where it's going to fit in, and what's the inherent messaging within the film. Okay, so outside of that, I think when I started writing the initial draft, there's so many things from my childhood that started coming back to me. The entire, it's very underplayed, it's very subtle, but there's a cast reference also within the film. So these are things that I've seen and done, and kind of the how they were used also. Like say, the hunting was and he's illegal, okay, but you take somebody from the lower caste along, okay, as your ally. So just in case if there's a police raid or if you're caught, you kind of push him to the front, because then the case is not registered. You kind of let you go easy on them, so they are used as a cover up, okay. So things like this had stayed in the mind, okay, and I knew of it, I'd heard of it. So everything started coming together, and this man who is so pure and so who is so one with nature, I mean, you can see him as Udupi as well. For me, that was the lens. And what if this man is Udupi and he's trying to belong and trying to get along with everything that's happening to Udupi, but you kind of it's a lost cause for me, at least when I see how Udupi has changed. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. I may be an old school guy, but it's a lost battle. And from day one, the moment you started, there's it always comes at a cost. Okay, so that was it. But yeah, so coming back to that, so it was about internalizing a lot of things that I'd seen. Also, there's a lot of boar hunting that used to happen in my plantation, in our plantation rather. Okay, so I'd seen that firsthand of how do people go about it, and all these things of you get people just for safety purposes and things like that. So and interestingly, I think the actor who plays Gurua, Mr. Basuma Kadugu, I think so. When we used to have sit downs and I used to take him through, what my idea of Gurua is, strangely, he was Gurua. He has lived the life of Gurua. He used to go hunting, and his dad used to be a hunter. He used to go on hunting rides with him, and all the honeybee thing that you see in the film, of telling where the beehive is based on, the thought. He shared that thought, saying, my dad could tell where the beehive was because he used to see the honeybee fly, and the bee used to carry nectar, and the light passes through the nectar and it shines. So okay, it's carrying the nectar, so it's heading this way, so the beehive will be this way. So a lot of these things, that was kind of mind-boggling for me when I had these conversations with him, that he was Gurua. He had lived that life. So a lot of those details also made its way into the film. So I did during shoot, kind of his instincts also took over. I think he just started being Gurua. He started living the life of Gurua. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, there's a lot of my life that I've lived in Gurua also. Strangely, I've not lived a life. My life has been nothing like Gurua per se, but I've seen Gurua's life from very close quarters. So when I was writing it.
That makes a
I
lot of
hope
sense
I've
actually,
answered your
because
question. I have this tendency
right.
of going in outward
No, no, no.
spiral.
This is
So
that's exactly why we are doing this podcast. You're free to do it. Come on, please. Uh, yeah, like
Also,
as
I'd
a,
like to
as
lay a little context on the curation that Sumanth had hinted on. That all the episodes were actually um, based on the curation of the life cycle of a person. So when we decided that okay, these are the 7 stories, we wanted to ask ourselves, okay, how those stories didn't come randomly. They were made as a choice, and their names were made as a choice because we had a set of 15 stories, but we chose this based on the curation, right? So the curation was the life cycle of a person, and the original ordering is not the one that you see on the website right now, because we did a bunch of test screenings and we realized the original ordering is going to be a difficult experience for most people, so let's not risk that. But the original ordering goes this way, right? So the first episode is tradition, and from the curation point of view, it's supposed to be the idea of the tradition of the family you and I are born into, all of us are born into. So I might speak a certain language and you might speak another language, I might eat non-veg and you may not. All of these decisions are just simply made by the tradition of the family you're born into, right? So that's episode one, supposed to be episode one. So the second episode was supposed to be legacy, where we reach a stage in life where we feel like we know right now. We know right from wrong. But the question really you have to ask yourself in teenagers, whose right is it? It's most probably your father's right or your mother's right, because that's how you learn how to treat a woman or how to treat a maid in the house. All these ideas are borrowed, but you think it's your right, but it's really not. You know so the stage after that is flight, where you decide to take on the world and say, fuck society, fuck everything, and this usually we do for career or love or something like that, and we decide we're going to take on the world. Like, I decided, Suman decided that we're going to fuck everything, we're going to take on and pursue filmmaking and it's this romantic idea. And the very stage after that is delusion, where you realize that नहीं यहाँ पे भी काम करना पड़ता है, यहाँ पे भी उतना romantic नहीं है. You have to figure out. You realize you've been living in your small bubble. And confirm, yeah. You also have to confirm. And this is like our life story with Ekam. We've been in that delusion ki ho jayega, right? So after delusion comes masquerade. This we're indicating, in life when you probably get married and you settle down, and now so you have needs, you have this, you have to go out there and work in society and figure out, but you realize everyone has their own agenda and you don't really know anyone. Everyone has their, piece. So you have to play that role right now. So after masquerade comes void. When you have played all these roles till now, because you realize tradition, you were playing a role, legacy role, flight, everything is a role. And suddenly you realize the play has moved along. They don't need you anymore. This is probably when you're retired. You're retired and you have kids, and kids have moved on, and everything's happened. From an age point of view, but you realize and you experience that emptiness or void for the first time, where nobody needs you, and in that void is when you might actually question your identity, because till now you've only been playing roles, which is the last one where you actually question who are you in the first place, beyond all the roles you played. So this was the curation and this was the original ordering, right? And why, like Suman said, the curation we knew had to be driven by the place. So we wanted to drive this, and the parallel was with Karavali, and we wanted to talk about identity because of the fact that Sumanth mentioned, that we think Karavali is going through an identity crisis. Because on one end, you have such rich geography, food, culture, weather, everything. It's beautiful, any direction. Like you go in this direction, 5 kilometers, there's a hill, forest, 5 kilometers this direction, there's a beach, and the rivers meeting the beach. It's beautiful. But at the same time, if you visit Manipal, it's devoid of people in the sense, of course, there are these kids in colleges, but if you go to the people from there, it's these huge houses and huge, land around the house, but they are either empty or they're only old people living there, because the youth have either moved on to Dubai or Bombay or Bangalore, depending on their economic class. And so that's really the question we're posing. What is Karavali going to choose? Who is Karavali going to become? You know. So this was the entire curation. Of course, we've broken it up right now for the so that people don't watch tradition and be like, oh, I don't think I can watch anything else. So we were like, tradition can't be the first episode, so we had to switch it up. But otherwise, this is
But
the curation.
surprisingly, I think a couple of them have kind of figured it out, though. They have mentioned about the entire life cycle, so that's good, and that's very heartening to see that people have kind of found a larger connect, and it's not very
Right,
random
right.
collection of short stories.
Right. Absolutely. And in fact, I remember that, in fact, Tradition and Legacy were the very first two episodes that I watched for the very first time when Sandeep and I were having a chat. I guess Shankar was also there on the call. And Tradition and Legacy, I actually forgot mentioning it while Sumanth was here. Legacy has to be like a very, it reminded me of that story of the show Twilight Zone, the earlier Twilight Zone, the American series. It's a brilliant, brilliant show, and I was reminded of it because Legacy is the best, perfectly paced written short story. It leaves you with that impact. It arranges everything. It sets up everything, and it leaves you with a lot of pondering. That you are seeing everything, and of course we have the animated intro as well, like a prologue. So again you have that question, and then what you are seeing here is that question. And of course, since I am in the stage of discovering Kannada cinema, so the moment I saw the lady who plays the maid, I'm like, oh wait, I've seen her. She was in Kantara. What was her name? I'm so sorry, I don't
Mansi
remember.
Sudhir, yeah.
Mansi Sudhir, yes, Mansi Sudhir. So that is also there. But there is this one line of thread that also seems to connect all the 7 episodes. I'm guessing that now it connects the 7 episodes because I've seen 5 of them, only 2 are pending now. It's that the people around the main characters, like what connects the 7 episodes seemingly is that more than the others, like there is an inherent chaos in the community itself that surrounds the main characters, jiska peak we have found in Masquerade. Because a member from my team also watched the episodes, and he mentioned this, that there is this theme of chaos, either comical or in a tense chaos, amongst the people who are surrounding the main characters. So, was this setup of chaos a choice, or was it an organic result while you were making your stories? How was it like, and when did that choice came into being?
I don't think it was a very conscious choice, but just the fact that there is so much chaos around us, and we were purely looking at stories that could be universal, okay, that is so rooted in Udupi, yet is universal and could connect to somebody in Brazil, maybe. So that way, kind of when you go at it, I think it becomes like, say, we have had so many people who tell us that, I was Dhanraja, or my dad was Dhanraja, Raj's character in Masquerade, or I know this uncle is Govinda Mama or Keshav Mama from tradition. So people are able to make that connect within them, within their families, within their circles. So for me, when I look at it, life in general is chaotic. India though is supremely chaotic. Okay, so that kind of has made its way into the films, I believe. But it was not a very conscious choice to go after chaos and chaos around people, but it was rather to see, if you could say, stories that are very, very specific to our curation. In terms of, when you're saying tradition, what is that story trying to say? The larger theme is still tradition. And then inherently, when you're talking about what Sandeep said, that, because, to put it as simply as, you speak a certain language, or your choice of food and everything comes from the fact that you have grown up with a set of people. So that itself becomes very chaotic, like ye sahi hai, ye galat hai, ye karo, wo mat karo, and all that, no? So when you take a step back and look at it, that is chaos. You just take a step back and see you have been kind of force fed so many opinions and rights and wrongs and all that.
Flight has to be one of the most surprising stories, because I did not expect that there will be a musical connect to that, and in such a great way. Like flows very smoothly. It just enters the narrative, and you're like, okay, wait. Firstly, I was thinking that she's mute, but she's not mute. She's actually speaking her thoughts, and then you realize ki, acha, okay, there is an entire musical, and then that music, that playfulness of the music turns into liberation. So I really, really like that aspect about this particular story. But there is another thing, and I'm sure that, I mean, you guys are being too humble about it, but I feel that it's a great task for anybody to shoot in such areas where, there is a lot of forest land, and there is, I'm sure, with the equipments and with the setups, with the lighting, you guys must have had your fair share of challenges. So I would love to know about some of them, and how did you overcome those challenges, especially while shooting for episodes like Void, where the entire story takes place, inside a forest, and the story itself is talking about how forests have become foreign. You can say that we like gravitating more towards the cities. So I would love to know about the challenges and how did you overcome them.
Yeah, I think each episode was a challenge. Like, say, Void particularly was a different kind of challenge because of the terrain, the forest. It was hilly just to get the equipment up. Though we were pretty light on our entire technical crew, in the sense we are not a full blown crew out there. We are just about managed with what we could for the terrain and all that. So, but still, it was quite a task. And then you would have, if you are shooting night, then you would, all the lightmen would be stung by bees, and then we would have to stop shoot. Things that we did not anticipate for. Because the bees would come looking for the light, and they would cover up the entire light. These big LED lights would be covered with bees, and then there would be lightmen stung by that and things like that. And also the sound of generator, this constant tussle between the camera and the sound department, where the sound wants the generator moved down, and the camera guys say, yaar nahi, uska light power nahi aayega yahan tak, and all that. But and also, kind of the fact that we had a smaller team, I think, made life a lot easier. And the fact that we had spent so much time in pre-production for Void and for all the films, actually, like Sandeep mentioned, we had, the entire team had moved down 3 months before shoot. Even the sound guys used to come. They used to come with us for recce. Only once they okayed it would we go ahead and all that. So I think that made life a lot easier. We had anticipated Void to be a lot harder. It was hard, definitely, without a doubt. But I think what was a lot more challenging was films like Masquerade and films like Flight, which happened in a small town. Okay, but you had so many people, and we had to do crowd control. We had to do traffic control more than anything. But the fact that we shoot it in a place like Udupi, which is so welcoming, thankfully, that people kind of own the film. The villagers own the film, and they were stopping traffic. The people were yelling at them for no reason. They used to talk that they're like one minute, and then they used to say, no, this is a film they're shooting in our village. They're going to show our village and all that. So the entire village kind of owned it up also, and I'm so thankful for that. That has been my experience right from the first shot, even before Ekam. I have no idea why I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't let somebody come to my house, put me out of the house, and stay there, shoot overnight.
No, but to add to what Sumanth was saying, right? Like the in Masquerade, we needed around there's a shot where we needed a political rally in the middle of the village setup and all that, and we needed around 100 200 people, right? And again, we are a very very small production, so we don't have budgets to hire that many people or anything of that sort. So it's the people who actually lived there in their entire village that just said, okay, क्या time पे आना है बोलो, music चलाओगे हाँ ठीक है चलो done we'll come, you know. So people, there's the things we pulled off with Ekam is only possible because we were in that region, you know. uh, we've got so much help from people finding locations for us, from people like in Flight, all the auto drivers took control of traffic. We had a people from all sort of the people who are running the shop there and everything just come and say, okay, we'll help you with this, you guys focus on your work, you know. So it's incredible amount of love. I've never experienced that. I've shot so much in Bangalore, I've never experienced that. It's not to say that Bangalore people don't offer love. It's just that we've not experienced something at this level.
Yeah, and for that long, like say when we shot Flight for 5 days or 7 days, I think there was a carpentry shop by the bus stand, and every 2 minutes when we were taking a shot, we used to ask them to stop their drilling machine and things like that, and they would do that. Now, why would you do it? You would do it for one day, maybe at max, or 2 days, but to do it for 7 days in a stretch, you. So I think it would have been impossible without them kind of lending their support that way.
But I want to understand one thing, that people like me who are now getting introduced to Kannada cinema, and they are going to experience something like Ekam. So I would love to know from you, like what is the state of Kannada cinema right now, and what all can people like me who wish to experience and explore the beauty of the stories that come specifically from your region want, like what is it that you would like to recommend, what is it that you would like, how would you introduce us to Kannada cinema? Because to be very honest, I was introduced to Kannada cinema because of KGF. Before that, I did not watch any Kannada film, but KGF just opened the doors for me, and then Thiti came in, and I was totally hooked. And then, of course, I discovered this amazing person called Prashant Neel, and I just love his mind, how his works, and everything, and everyone who is involved. And there is so much that is coming up in Kannada cinema, who are trying to raise the bar. And then of course you have Rakshit, we have Rishabh, and we have Raj, the triple R of Kannada cinema, as they like to call it. But how would you, like from you personally, how would you introduce someone to Kannada cinema? What can we expect from Kannada cinema in the future, and what is the state, how is the landscape of Kannada cinema changing right now? Because I'm sure Ekam is definitely going to create that impact.
Yeah, like say, if I were to recommend, if you're asking me for recommendations, then the most recent would be this beautiful film called Sapta Sagaradacello, which had Rakshit in it, and which was directed by Hemant Rao. And I think it's a beautiful film. And I mean, it's one of the best romantic films. I mean, it's in romance genre. I mean, there are very few films that I absolutely relate to in our Indian context, and this was very beautiful, way too personal for me. So that is one. And outside of that, definitely, I mean, Raj, Rakshit, Rishabh, what they're doing is incredible right now. They're kind of breaking the boundaries. They're reaching out to people outside the state. And what could change also, because I think Kannada is still underrepresented in the entire OTT space. Okay, it's a chicken and egg thing, like say if the OTT's argument is that there is, you have subscribers from Kannada, from Karnataka, from Bangalore and all that, but they're not watching Kannada films. But my counter argument would be, you do not have the best of Kannada films out there. So only when you do that will people start watching more. But of course, there are films now. There are good films that have come recently that are there on Prime. But there's a lot of good films that I know that are still not out there. In the indie scene especially, because when we talk about Kannada films, we only talk about a Kantara and a KGF. But simultaneously, around the same time, there were films like Pedro, there was Shivamma that were traveling film festivals abroad and winning accolades everywhere. So that was also happening. And the fact that was also backed by a Rishabh Shetty who did a Kantara, and a Rakshit who is doing mainstream films, or a Hemant who is doing something else. So this is happening. There's something brewing for sure. For all the success of a KGF and a Kantara, there is also a brilliant indie scene that is coming up. Just that I hope, that also is celebrated as much as a KGF and a Kantara, whereas it is not right now. Nobody, even within Karnataka, not many people know of a Pedro or a Shivamma. So that is there. I mean, it's changing for sure. There are a lot of newer voices. And there is also this brilliant film called Hostel Hudagaru Bekagiddare. Okay, which I think you should watch just because it's a bonkers film. They've just gone all out and had so much fun. And that is what films can be and should be also, I think. So I'm very hopeful of, in terms of the technicians that we have right now. And I think this is a great time to be in the Kannada film industry. In terms of distribution, I still have my problems. So I hope Ekam can change that in some way or contribute towards a larger change. It's just a small stepping stone.
Absolutely. I did watch Hostel Hudagaru Bekagiddare, and someday I hope I get the chance to talk to this mad guy who did that movie. I mean,
Absolutely.
the kind of choices that he has made for even one scene that is hardly of 2 or 3 seconds कि मतलब यहाँ पे भी हम लेंस चेंज कर देंगे, ऐसे कर देंगे, we'll it is
कुछ भी
one of the
मतलब
craziest
इतना
films that I've seen.
Yeah, they've had so much fun, and I was like in the theater in awe. Like ये कैसे I can even think that मैं जाऊंगा ये pull off करूंगा and I'm just going to do this. So it was bonkers film. I just came back and completely inspired from that film. So all those films are still not celebrated, I think, outside, or because they deserve a chance to be seen by more, because that is what films are about. No, you're just breaking the boundaries completely in terms of what films can be. No.
Yeah, see, I think the Kannada industry, like Suman said, I mean, he's he's given a solid context, but it's a very very exciting space, because uh, it, it's on one end, I think, like the OTTs say that we don't have enough people watching Kannada, and at the same time, the largest, I think, Bangalore and Karnataka has one of the largest viewership for all of these OTTs. Okay, except the yeah, except the uh, uh, thought is that they're watching other stuff and not Kannada, right? But like he said, it's a chicken and egg because there is no Kannada, not enough Kannada content that you're putting up on these OTTs are developing for them to watch. But either way, all those problems aside, it's not like OTTs are the only uh, space for this. But I think the amount of evolution that the industry is going through is so fascinating. It's almost like suddenly, and I think we owe it to people like Rakshit and Pavan Kumar and all these people, because all those films had to, it's a lot of failures. It's not like Uldavaru Kandante that Rakshit made was celebrated and it was a theatrical. No, it came, didn't do well theatrically, and then people discovered it, and then it became a cult hit. And I think we are still in that process largely. We are reaping the benefits from a Rakshit because they are supporting people like us. But from an industry point of view, I think we are going to suffer the same to a large extent. Where discovery will be much later than the release point. So I think there's a process of earning back our audience, and earning the audience outside of Karnataka as well, that the industry is going through, but also it gives scope for so much experimentation right now, because the slate is sort of there's no boundaries that this is Kannada cinema. At least not the way I see it. So I feel like it's an exciting space to be in, but it's also a high stakes game right now. It's not as established. It doesn't have an established audience outside of Karnataka, not for all films at least. Yeah, but I think we will earn it, but I think that will take that amount of time. So it's an exciting time to belong. It's an exciting time to, and at the same time, the whole audience. I don't think these distinctions of Kannada and Tamil and Malayalam. I think they're all where we come from, but otherwise for the audience it's cinema largely. I think a portion of the audience is going into that direction. That I think we have only the OTTs to thank and the pandemic, because we started consuming. I mean, everyone started consuming so many languages. It didn't matter, right? Like, I don't think anyone asks, when you watch Money Heist, that hey, ye Spanish hum kaise dekh rahe hain? It's not like you ask what language Narcos was in. You don't give a shit. You're watching it, right? So these questions seem to be these invisible boundaries that we have. Like, for example, I am a Malayali born and brought up in Bangalore who studied film in Chennai. Okay, so I can make films in 5 languages. Okay, happily, not a problem, right? So, will I make films only in Kannada for the rest of my life? No, I don't think so. I will make films in whatever language that I feel that that story or that film lends itself to, and what I want to be excited by. So, I myself consider myself on one end a bastard that belongs nowhere. On the other end, I consider myself super lucky that I can belong everywhere. you know so I think that's what's also happening. Like, if you ask Sumanth, can he make a film in Hindi? 100%, right? Can he make? But it's a choice that we make where and all that. So I feel like, yes, Kannada film industry is full of possibilities, but I also feel like, being from Bangalore, it's a whole other thing. you know Being from Bangalore, everyone here speaks so many languages. Like, me and Sumant converse in Hindi most of the time. For some reason, me and him speak in Hindi and English. you know so God knows what's going to happen. Yeah, I feel like there's no limitations really. uh, and it's a super exciting space. But to give you a viewpoint of Canada, I would say that, uh, it's nascent right now. It's almost like a rebirth, and that's what's exciting to belong in this
Yeah,
time,
something's
because you don't know where it's going to head.
yeah, yeah, something's brewing for sure. I think. I mean, I feel it. I strongly believe it.
And I have to tell you one thing, Parush, that the few people that have watched Ekam, Sumant and I went into this release thinking, यार 50-60% से तो गाली गाली आएगा, सॉलिड गाली सुनने वाले
Yeah.
हैं कि
कि
क्या
ये तुम
बनाया
लोगों ने
तुम
क्या
लोग ने,
बना दिया ये?
व्हाट इज दिस शिट दिस इतना सब धूम धाम मचा के you're like screwing us over. We thought that's what's going to happen, right? But that percentage of people who find it, this is not entertaining, this is not what we expected, is down to a 1-2%. The amount of love that we're getting is incredible. Of course, the numbers are not like crazy, but the people who have watched, and there are people. Someone who wrote to us yesterday is someone who has never subscribed to any OTT platform before. Okay, and she bought it, and then she saw everything, she loved it, and she was like, okay, can't wait for season 2, whatever. So there's so much love that it's incredible. So two things that it tells us. One is that, people say ki, you have to dumb it down for the audience. If you want it to have I don't believe that at all. And we've had our doubts about it as to, are we being naive about it? But I feel like, no. If you see the kind of people that are resonating with this, it's not like they've been going to film festivals and they've done some sort of film appreciation. No, they're coming from films that they've consumed online and on TV, and they are saying, hey, this is super fresh. Yeah, the rhythm is not what we're used to, but it's super fresh, and I can't believe this has come out of Kannada, and so on and so forth. One is that, and the second is there a size of an audience for something in this, right? So quote unquote indie cinema. See, I want to redefine that. I don't think anything is indie or, see, commercial is what, according to uh, someone who taught me in film school. He used to always say this, and I absolutely believe it. He was like, any film is commercial as long as it plans on making its money back. If it makes its money back, it's a commercial film. That's it. If you plan on not making money with your film, then you are not dealing with commerce. So you're not a commercial film, you know. So I think that's all it is. Because if you ask me right now, is 12th Fail a commercial film? You know, yes, it's a fantastically commercial film, you know. So so I would say these boundaries are all up for, redefinition, and all these definitions are up for grabs. And because I don't want to make a single film that does not make my investors money. Nobody wants to do that, right? So it's about figuring that balance, and it's about figuring whether there's an audience for it. And I feel there is promise, and I feel there's the audience is a lot more mature than we give them credit for.
Absolutely. I think for me as a filmmaker, I was also in the journey of where am I going to find my audience from? Because having done Ekam a couple of years back, and then having done my first debut feature film, Mithya. So I have also constantly been asking myself, do I have an audience for the kind of films that I'm making in the first place? So these first few days of Ekam, a kind of, it's been a solid reassurance, a solid validation that way, that there is an audience and people do consume and people do love and people do champion films like this. And so for me, that's been the biggest takeaway from these 6 days of release, that there is an audience there. I can still go ahead and make my films.
And we're also, I mean, to add one more point, it's not like we're delusional about what we've done. Okay. We know that we have played around with the balance of entertainment and meaning in ways that are not traditional. We know that it's not entertainment in the ways that could work, maybe make it a little easier for the audience, right? We know we've done that, but at the same time, the belief is this, right? We absolutely believe in our aesthetic. We absolutely believe in the filmmaking that's in our head, right? But we have to give our skill set and our experience time to catch up. Every filmmaker does. We can't expect that, in the first film that balance is going to be perfect for us. So for us, Ekam, at least for me, I mean, Sumanth has had two chances right now with Vidya and Ekam. For me, with Ekam, it's my first step in that direction, you know, to see. And I think it's going to take a lot more films before it meets the aesthetic in my head, or the imagination in my head, you know. And that, as long as, and people say, oh, this film is indulgent. I mean, not about, we haven't heard that about Ekam yet, but I'm sure we will. I think the only difference is we took that liberty with our first project. And I think the realization is a lot of filmmakers earn that indulgence over time, with their audience. Because if you look at Nolan right now, he literally took a physics class with Tenet, right? But he's earned that indulgence. He's absolutely earned that indulgence, right? So I think that's also a takeaway. These are all learnings and realizations that you have as a,
We are
when you
more
pursue
worried than the
filmmaking.
audience when somebody tells us that, I'm planning to binge watch it tonight. We are like, "Arey yaar, please don't." We kind of want to warn you, ki binge mat karo. This is not the kind of, we have been indulgent, yes, but we have also gone after what we truly believed in then. Now, if we have to make Ekam, we would make it very differently, maybe. But we are so glad that we made it the way we made it, because that's been one hell of a learning also. So, yeah. But it's the I mean, yeah, just reiterating what I said, no, it's been heartening in the sense of, kind of, we are not giving the audience, me included, maybe, the credit that they're very mature for, they're open for different kinds of content. We just need to present. Maybe it's not a kind of material that they're going to come to theaters for. Absolutely not. But sitting back at home in your space, would you enjoy something like a Ekam? I mean, I'd like to believe that they do.